ladies and gentlemen. I am Officer Ira Jenkins, that's spelled E-R-A-J-E-N-K-I-N-S, and I'm the spokesperson for the BART Police Department. On behalf of our Police Chief, Kenton Rainey, and the entire BART Police Department, we want to welcome you to our press conference. Before you leave, we want to hand out a press kit to each one of you. It has a lot of good information in there, including a list of frequently asked questions about today's press conference. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our Patrol Operations Deputy Chief, Ben Fairow, that's spelled B-E-N-F-A-I-R-O-W. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for all being here. Community policing has been a philosophy that the majority of police departments throughout the nation have been following in one form or another, and the BART Police Department is no exception. Community policing has been a part of our mission for some time now. In fact, part of our mission statement even is to promote public confidence by working in partnership with our stakeholders and the communities we serve. And today is basically the announcement of the next step in that, and that's the geographic zone policing concept using COPS. And COPS stands for Community-Oriented Policing Problem Solving. This change that's coming up with the zone policing is in keeping with the Noble reforms. The report had a focus on community policing, so that is the direction that we continue to move. And the geographical policing is basically the next step. So what is COPS? COPS is an organizational-wide philosophy. It's aimed at reducing crime and disorder through the promotion of community and police partnerships, including the government agency, and proactive problem solving. It requires a clear focus and consistent support from the organization, and successful implementation requires the concept to be embraced by both the police department and the district. And you're going to hear me talking a lot about partnerships. It's not just the community and the police, but it's the district and the police and the community. In fact, you could almost call it, rather than community policing, community governing, because it involves everyone. The difference between traditional and community-oriented police problem solving, incident-driven, is the traditional model. You get a call, you respond to the call for service. With community policing, community-oriented problem-solving policing, we basically look at the symptoms, and we see what problems cause those symptoms to occur. So rather than just addressing the symptoms, we look for the root cause of those problems. The geographical or zone policing provides a structure for community-oriented policing problem solving. It supports the CompStat process, which many of you might be familiar with. The CompStat process is something that many organizations go through. We have a monthly CompStat process here where we take a look at crime trends, examine the numbers, and take a good solid look at what those underlying problems might be. In the past, we've had 4 zones. We've divided the zones now into 5. Each zone is led by a lieutenant. Each zone commander you see standing behind me here. It allows each zone to be divided into 2 or more PSAs also. Now what this does is allows us to bring down the geographic area that we're concentrating on and concentrate on specific problems in those areas. Because as you can imagine, BART encompasses 4 counties, 104 miles of track, and the problems are different in each of those communities as we get into the smaller areas. So the difference in San Francisco, a downtown San Francisco station, it's going to be markedly different than, say, Pleasant Hill or Walnut Creek. It allows for a customized approach to problem solving. It also acknowledges the relationship between quality of life issues and crime problems. In the traditional model of policing, police frequently address crime problems, don't they? You get a 911 call, you go out and address it. But for our commuters and our customers, the communities that we serve, often it's quality of life issues that they're focused on. So the COPS philosophy allows us to acknowledge the fact that both of those are intertwined and related to one another. So the zone boundaries, you'll be getting a map at the end of this, but the new zones, Zone 1 encompasses Oakland, basically the Oakland stations. Zone 2 is Contra Costa County, as well as the Berkeley stations. Zone 3 is the remainder of Alameda County. Zone 4, San Francisco. And Zone 5 is San Mateo County. Wrapping this all up, the new zone policing concept and utilizing COPS in the BART Police Department, it's going to be good for BART customers. It's going to address the quality of life issues that they have to face each and every day. It's going to reduce crime for them. It's also going to be good for the BART Police Department because it's going to allow for our officers to have the ownership that they want to have in the problem-solving process. And finally, it'll be good for the communities that we serve because we will have a better partnership with them, with the district, and the communities that we serve. And we were expecting the Vice President to be here. Okay, he's coming, so at some point we'll fit him in here. I'll open it up now if there's any questions.
Where did this initiative come from? Is this from the new general manager, or is this part of the Noble report, or what prompted the change in strategy?
It's what contemporary police agencies do. The community policing philosophy is something that's been around since the late 80s, early 90s. Many departments have embraced it in one form or another. This is the format that we've chosen to proceed with. Chief Rainey came on board with that specific notion in mind, and he's been working towards it since he's been here.
So you're treating symptoms. Can you give an example of what you mean by that?
Well, a good example might be, say, a problem with auto burglaries. Not all of our stations have parking lots, so it isn't a problem in some stations that don't have parking available for our customers. But other places, it can be a problem if, say, there's an environmental issue of some kind. Maybe the parking lot's far away from any visible presence of BART personnel or police. So one answer to that might be to increase staffing or to move an agent booth or to add cameras, that type of thing. So the symptom is the fact that we're getting a lot of auto burglaries, which the traditional concept of addressing that with a police organization would be to just go out and try and arrest the perpetrators, look for the people committing those crimes, ignoring the fact that there might be some kind of environmental design problem in that parking lot that's encouraging this to happen. So, putting more not only arresting people is a good thing, but you put cameras up, you maybe increase presence there through maybe a station agent booth movement of some kind, those type of things. We actually have increased the presence on the trains just recently. Last couple of weeks I sent a directive out to increase the train rides. It will to some extent. We do, it's always a balancing act with that particular initiative because having officers on the trains limits their mobility. If they're heading in one direction, we have a problem behind them. They don't have a car that they can readily jump into and get to the problem. So we are moving that direction. We intend to increase even more by the end of next year the presence of officers on trains and platforms.
So then this just gives the territory that an individual officer has. It shrinks the territory that they
That's one way of looking at it. Another way to look at it is it encourages ownership of the problems in the area. If you have a vast area that you're responsible for as an officer, say all of Oakland, to address individual problems in Oakland might be difficult for one or two officers to handle. But if you can divide that up a little bit and turn it into just 2 or 3 stations where they can have ownership of those individual stations, they can have more impact. Also bringing the community and other agencies to bear at it.
Talking about agents, and a lot of calls about more officers on trains. In June of 2010, you talked about more officers on trains. When the new chief started, he rode the train to talk about more officers on trains. But the main complaint from people is there are not enough officers on trains. You said you increased that number 2 weeks ago. How is this going to improve your presence? Because we just keep hearing more officers on trains from you guys. It seems like it's an annual thing. Is it really happening? And is it going to happen more now?
Well, the short answer is yes, it is happening. I can show the numbers. I don't have them with me, but I think a good way to look at officers on trains and on platforms is the type of contact. We can't just simply go walking through a train and not stop and have interactions with our customers. And I think in the end, if you are encouraging officers to have ownership of the problems in the areas, they're going to establish those relationships with our customers, our communities. And when they do that, they're going to have these contacts. People are going to notice them. And I think you'll see an improvement in the numbers as far as people actually seeing the officers in the area.
What about parking lots? That's always another thing. People feel unsafe. Not enough officers in their cars aren't doing it in terms of walking through the parking lots.
And, that's another area where we're always looking for ways to improve. We've increased the presence of some of our CSOs, the community service officers. We're also starting a new initiative coming up here pretty soon. I'm kind of putting the final touches on it, where we'll have a special enforcement team out. These are all ways of looking at those problems and trying to get to the root cause of those problems rather than just dealing with the symptoms.
Can you talk about manpower and having stations? If you're going to do 5, are you going to need to occupy more facilities, and are you going to need more manpower to accomplish what you're talking about?
I don't anticipate that at this time. We're just moving into this community-oriented or the zone policing. The real key to it is the individual officers having ownership. And if they do it right, if we do it right, and they do develop this ownership of the problems and solve some of the problems at the root level, rather than just addressing the symptoms, it should actually take away calls for service and reduce calls for service and reduce the need for additional officers. That's not to say that we'll be reducing our numbers, because if you look at BART, it's growing. And, it's going to call for more officers. But I don't anticipate at this time it requiring more officers.
And
Facilities, I know that the chief is working on facility issues right now as far as our headquarters go. We've made some improvements in some of the existing facilities. I haven't taken a look at it yet at this time.
There have been 2 really highly publicized officer-involved shootings in recent years. If the COPS program was in place then, would the outcome be different? Would those situations have been handled differently?
Well, I don't know if that's anything that any of us can, sit here looking back accurately predict, but it's possible. One advantage of community-oriented policing and that COPS philosophy is you build relationships with the customers and other stakeholders. That can be station agents, train operators. It can be regulars in the station. You might know individuals and develop a rapport with them. So is it possible? Yes. I don't think there's any way we would know.
Is this going to affect response times and speed up with the different zones, or also going to get problems quicker?
Actually, we need to draw the distinction between emergencies, 911 calls, where, say, it's an ongoing a fight of some kind or a man with a gun. There's a difference between that type of call and a call to report an auto burglary or a vandalism. And I think it's important that you draw the distinction between those two, because it might actually, in the short term, speed up time to respond to some of the less high priority calls, so we can address with some of the root problem
Is this like
issues.
district stations, like where you have a captain in each of your 5 zones and they decide how to move the manpower about?
That's eventually probably the model we'll be moving towards. I don't know if it'll ever get to the point where it's actual precincts, because the important part of this concept is I've got 5 lieutenants and the 6 of us get together and we strategize and we talk about what works, what doesn't work. That's real important, so we don't keep making the same mistakes if something doesn't work. And when you actually get into precincts where we're separate and we're not together that often, that becomes problematic. Again, keeping in mind, 4 counties, 104 miles of track, communication is difficult for us.
What will the passengers notice if anything?
What will they notice?
Yeah.
Well, first off, one of the misconceptions about cops is it's not overnight. This isn't something that's going to just poof, magic wand, change everything overnight. It's a process. We're a long time getting to where we're at. We're going to be a long time getting to where we're going. But in the end, or as we move forward, better relationships with the passengers, better interactions, more of a partnership with them, so that everybody feels included. It fosters more job satisfaction for the officers because they own it. They enjoy being at work. And it fosters more of a sense of cooperation with our passengers because they know that the officers care.
Well, for instance, if the passengers hopping on the 103 train at 8 o'clock every morning, we see the same officer, most of the time, maybe that kind of thing, or what?
I don't know that necessarily that will occur. What will occur in the short term is you'll see more regular faces, mostly in the lieutenants here behind me, at community meetings and getting involved with some of the community groups that we serve.
But day-to-day, the passengers?
Well, day-to-day is difficult. Keep in mind, at any given time, there may be 25, 30 officers out in the field. That's a long dwell in between officers being on particular trains. So I don't know that, I don't know. In the short term, I don't know that we're going to see that occurring. I'm just looking for better relationships.
Is it unrealistic with the size of the department and so much track, if you will, to see more officers on trains, to see more officers in parking lots? Is that unrealistic?
I don't know that it's unrealistic. I think what's realistic and what we really need to focus on is quality contacts, making sure that when they are going through the trains that they meet people and they get to know the people who travel on the trains regularly, because they are, in fact, our eyes and ears when we have problems on the trains, so we need to foster that relationship.
But you ordered an increase on trains. You said that
I did.
the last couple of weeks. Why'd you do that? How many more are you adding, and what's that supposed to do?
Well, because we are trying to increase the presence on the trains and platforms. It's, again, a balancing act, because I still need to have the officers able to respond to emergencies when they're out in the field. So, but I recognize the value. We recognize the value of having the officers out there on foot, meeting the people in the trains, on the platforms, and in the parking lots.
Is there any deterrent? You know, do you feel that that's a deterrent? The presence is a deterrent? Because somebody who's waiting to commit crime is never going to know when one of you guys are showing up, or do you not feel, or do you feel it's more of a community relations thing than a deterrent of officers showing their faces on the trains?
We're focusing on the community relations aspect of it, but yeah, clearly a uniformed officer is a deterrent, but can I do that in every train, at every station, every parking lot? No. So we have to build these relationships and foster better relationships with those we serve.
Can you comment on the recent increase in bike thefts and how you anticipate this would affect how you deal with that in the future?
We have had an increase in bike theft, and that's actually a good example of the cops' philosophy at work. Rather than just looking for the suspects that are stealing them, which, believe me, we are, we're also looking at environmental design of the stations. Are those bike racks where we're having a lot of thefts at some stations, are they located in areas where they're less visible to the station agent or less visible to officers as they pass through? Do we need to move those to different locations to make them more environmentally unfriendly to the criminals?
Chief, do you care to say anything about the new program? Or you think it's...
Sure. We're very excited about the direction that we're headed in with our COPS philosophy, which is our crime-fighting strategy. And with the zone restructuring, that will definitely help facilitate our process as we go into our CompStat process, which allows for better accountability. We're looking to partner more with all the stakeholders, internally and externally, in order to address all the crime and social disorder issues impacting the district. And as Deputy Chief pointed out, each different station where people board trains has a different field, different problem. So we don't have a one-size-fits-all cookie cutter approach to trying to address these issues.
But overall, do you think the passengers will be safer and than the past time?
Absolutely, I think the passengers will feel safer as we go forward, continue to go forward with this philosophy, because it requires us to use the passengers and other stakeholders as a force multiplier. We move 350,000 people a day. If we can tap into their eyes and ears and ask them to assist us in alerting us when they see something, to say something that they think is out of the ordinary or suspicious, it allows us to drill down and focus and have more leverage and have a greater impact on the issues that are occurring within the district.
Can you give us an update on the crisis training for the officers? I think back around the Charlesville shooting, there's 10% of them were trained in the crisis training socially.
We continue to move forward with training our personnel in CIT, which is Crisis Intervention Training. And to date, I believe we have probably 60 sworn officers that have been trained, and we will continue with this training because the board has mandated that we do this until we train the entire department, not just our sworn staff, but our civilian staff as well.
Deputy Todd.
You had said that it will increase accountability. How does it do that?
Well, if you're familiar with the CompStat model, which Deputy Chief Fairow will be heading up, we have the ability to look at what we call performance measures, where crime is occurring, dates, times, locations, and match that up to what our individual officers are doing and we will be able to better move them around and put what we call cops on the dots, where we're having different hotspots. And so we have the ability to look at this type of data definitely on a monthly basis, and what we want to get down to where we're looking at it on a bi-weekly or even a weekly basis. And this allows us to better respond to what's going on, which brings us closer to what the riders want, what the district wants, and I think what all of us want is a safe transit system.
So the zones allow you to use CompStat, which allows you to identify hotspots, which allows you to better deploy?
Correct. A lot of agencies, when they implement community-oriented policing philosophy, they just dump it in their existing organizational operations. And if you don't change how the division of labor takes place amongst your personnel, i.e. the structure, you get more of the same. By changing our operational structure, drilling down and inserting what we call public service areas within the zone, we'll have better accountability, better response to the various problems that are occurring within the system.
The deputy chief talked about what prompted this new system. Can you elaborate on that? I mean, is it related to some of the officer-involved shootings, or what was that?
No, this was identified in the Noble report. This is something, as a deputy chief identified, a number of agencies are doing. This is something that I definitely have done at a number of agencies that I've worked at. I know this strategy works. The district police department had zone policing prior to my arrival. All we're doing is trying to refine it and improve and make it better.
Some people might look at this and say this is a good first step, this is a good change, but they might also say there's 127 policy changes that you want to see implemented. How many have you been able to check off? So how far, the big picture, how far along do you think you are?
If anybody wanted to know how we're doing on all the policy changes recommended in the Noble report, I will refer them to the BART website. Every 6 months, we do an update that talks about what we've accomplished, what are our milestones and successes when it comes to making changes. It's very transparent and it's available. As a matter of fact, last night, the Citizen Review Board met, and I appeared before them, and they went through the entire, what we call the Noble Matrix update. They went through the entire book with me.
So how do you feel you, as a department leader, Chief, how do you feel that the department is able to implement changes on time, ahead of schedule, it's tedious? How would you characterize the department?
Everything that you've illustrated. Successful organizational change, especially going to the COPS philosophy, it can take anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And I've been on board for 20 months. I'm very, very pleased with the progress that we're making. It's very easy to write policy and hand policy out. It's another thing to make it part of your organizational culture and drill down and hold people accountable for results. Any other questions? Officer Jenkins?
Well, since our vice president of the board has not appeared yet, we are going to conclude our portion of the press conference. And thank you so much for coming. And please see CSO, which is Community Service Officer Lauren LaPlante, for your press kits. Thank you.